It's time to talk Gonzaga basketball.
Get ready.
It's the Spokesman-Review Zags Insiders Podcast.
Here we go.
Here's Jim Meehan and Richard Fox.
Good Monday morning. Welcome back to the Zags Basketball Insiders Podcast. Regular crew with you, Richard Fox from the TV side of things and Jim Meehan with the Spokesman-Review. Well, interesting 3 days in Maui, Foxy. We got a lot to talk about with those 3 games and what's ahead. We've got Cal State Bakersfield coming up Tuesday. I think you're doing that game, right?
I am.
And then we got USC in Vegas on December 2nd. And we will travel down for that one. But first, Foxy, give me the update. How did Turkey Day go for you?
It was great, buddy. My wife's a great cook. Had my folks up from Denver for the long weekend and had some friends over with their little baby. And then we kind of do an open house model. So we had several folks come by throughout starting the early afternoon. And it was great. I, per usual, ate more than I needed to. And found myself going to the fridge like at 9:30. You ever do that? You make a plate thinking, I'm still hungry. And then you have like 2 bites and you're just stuffed. So it was
mandatory, man. That's mandatory.
Exactly what you need. So how about you? How was Thanksgiving? I mean, you were working some, but I'm sure you had you suffered on the beach somewhere for a while.
No, I didn't. I actually, every time I've covered Maui Invitational, I've always flown back on Thanksgiving Day, because the final games are Wednesday. So
okay.
I am willing to do that just because the airports are a little less crazy on Thanksgiving, a lot less crazy. And so my wife and I we split a tuna sandwich and a chicken sandwich, but we splurged. We got the jalapeno mac and cheese at the SeaTac airport. So another quality Thanksgiving meal for us. But no complaints. I would rather not fight the airports than
I almost feel bad for you having to come back to the cold weather. Almost, but not quite.
Yeah, I'm still adjusting to the climate. I'll get there soon. Let's move on. The rankings hadn't come out as far as I've seen as of this taping Monday morning. The Zags were 11th last week. I think they'll stay there plus or minus a spot after going 2-1 in Maui. Lost to the presumptive number 1 now, Purdue, which won Maui in impressive fashion, beat 3 really good teams. And I expect they'll be number 1, probably Arizona number 2. And Tommy Lloyd, they've been off to a great start. And if memory serves, those 2 teams meet each other.
They do.
I think in about 8-10 days, maybe in Indianapolis. And that will be that'd be a big time game. Those 2 right now look like the cream of the crop, but a lot of season left to come, and the Zags know that as well as anybody after going to Maui, kind of getting a barometer on where they are right now. And let's go back through Maui. We've got 3 games. We'll just take them in order. Purdue out of the gate. Kind of Zach Edey did his thing, but first half, I thought the Zags did a pretty nice job on him. He did get to the foul line and cashed in there, but 4 of 11. Opens up, hits a jump hook, hits another jump hook in the middle of the key, and you're thinking he's on his way to 40, but got after him a little bit, did a better job with him, led by 9. I think when you look at that final score of Purdue 73-63, you kind of lose sight of that. Led by 5 at halftime, but it kind of got away in the second half at both ends of the floor. What'd you see in that final 20 against Purdue?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was still a game, I want to say, with 5-6 minutes left. It wasn't as if it was out of reach for Gonzaga. Well, and I think, I'm sure we will talk about it in more detail, but this is obviously a team that struggled coming out of the gate, shooting the 3-point shot. I mean, you look across the stat sheet, other than the shooting, pretty even between both teams. And that's a really good Purdue team. I mean, they got a lot of experience, depth, and obviously Edey's just an entity in and of himself. But Gonzaga did a nice job, taking care of the ball, and I just thought it came down to shot quality, for me. I thought too many 3-point shots, and I know there's a narrative that maybe Edie so dominates the paint so much you've got to take some of those shots. But I mean, Gonzaga for the game was better than 54% from inside the arc in the second half, despite struggling to score or shoot the ball well. Shot 57% inside the arc, so they were having success attacking the rim. I thought EK was really good going up against Edie, but just in the second half settled for those 3-point shots. And coming into this year, I mean, EK had taken 12 shots from behind the arc. He's already got 9 up. Now I know his percentage at 4 of 9 is pretty good, but I doubt that they brought him in thinking he would supplement what they're trying to do from the 3-point line. Those are not the shots that I think they want him to take. And he shoots better than 60% on the season inside the arc. That's even after going 0 of 6 against UCLA. So I thought fatigue set in a little bit. I know I thought I read a quote from Mark kind of just refuting that, saying he didn't think so. But Nembhard had a naked 3-point shot on the left side of the court and airballed it by a couple of feet. I think he was just gassed. So it's a combination of just this has not been a good 3-point shooting team on balance for the year, but was really, really bad in that second half, 0 of 13 from the 3-point line. I believe that's what, so I just think if some better shot quality, a little bit more patience offensively, and you're probably looking at a close game down the stretch.
Yeah, they hung around in the second half, but Purdue just kind of, I'm telling you, Purdue is so they are a complete team. They're very good defensively. They're very good offensively. They put a ton of foul pressure on you, and I thought the kid who made the difference in that game, beyond Edie having a very solid second half, was Braden Smith, the point guard. I think he made it really hard on Nembhard and Hickman at both ends of the floor, because he can shoot it, he can drive it, and I think he made 6 out of 8 shots. He distributes it well. He kind of controls the pace of things. And Purdue doesn't want to go up and down like crazy. They want to get into their stuff and pound you inside. But he was a very much a difference maker in that game. And I think you're right. I did ask Mark about fatigue, especially with Ryan. I think he played close to 39 minutes or something. Anyway,
he played 39.
Yeah. So, and he didn't shoot it well. None of them shot it well that second half. 0 for 13. They had no complaints about the shot quality, and I don't really remember shots being forced. I thought, like you mentioned, it could have just been better going inside out or trying to get something in the interior or off the bounce or something, but. Purdue wasn't giving up much of it either, and I think we kind of saw the Zags. That was kind of the first time I thought, man, no Steele Venters, kind of a designated 3-ball shooter. I think they missed him there and in that game, but I really thought Braden Smith gave Gonzaga fits much the way he did last year. Lance Jones off the bench, or not off the bench, but after a tough first half, really got going in the second half. So they had some options. And really the Zags, after Graham's start, I think he had some early points. There was no steadiness on the offensive end.
Yeah, I mean, well, and Smith also had 5 steals. He plays. He's different than Nembhard in that he's not go the whole time, but he does have that change of pace in him. It just has a great feel for when to push it, when not to. Make sure that they get into their stuff. Look, Purdue shot 28% of their shots from the 3-point line. Gonzaga shot 46%. And yes, if you're wide open and you take that shot, one can argue that that's a good shot. But sometimes it begs the question, why are you so open? And is that the shot we want in that moment? And then I understand the idea that, shooters got to shoot. And if you're struggling, you've got to keep taking those shots. But I also think there's a point of stubbornness where, as a player, I don't have it tonight in this, my 3-point shot's not there. What else can I do? Can I try to attack the rim, break the defense down, whatever the case might be? And look, that's a very good team. You know, I don't think there's a great team in college basketball this year, but they're the top end of college basketball is very good. Gonzaga's right there with them with about 5 minutes left. I think that's the takeaway. You know, we talked about it last week. Is what how will Gonzaga measure up? You're going to learn a lot about yourself this week, and I think one of the things they can take away is we can play with just about anybody, and they did that with Purdue. Obviously, got away from them at the end a bit, but overall on balance, despite some of the challenges, I think it was a good showing, and I thought a great response moving forward through the tournament.
Yeah, Syracuse was up next. I watched the Syracuse-Tennessee opener, quite a bit of it, and I thought Syracuse would give GU some issues just because they're athletic. They were very tough-minded against Tennessee for the majority of that game. Got a very nice guard, Judah Mintz, about 6'4", that can go inside and outside, and another guard with him too that played pretty well. And really, the kind of story of that game is Mintz got his points, the other guard got his points, but the Zags pretty much shut that offense down. I think they scored 57 points. They didn't shoot it very well. Zags used some bigger lineups quite a bit and kind of dominated the glass. Bunch of interior points early that in the first half when they got ahead, and then kind of finished them second half with some three balls. Nolan Hickman hitting one of those in that second half to stop a run by the Orange. Against Syracuse, just a nice bounce back. Not stress-free, but no doubt Gonzaga was the better team for 40 minutes.
Yeah, I think I said last week that I thought Syracuse, among the Division I teams that was going to be there, was probably the lower end of kind of what their season prospects look like. And I went away from that game thinking the same thing. I'm not sure we're going to look back in March and say quality win for GU. That looked like a team that's trying to figure out a lot of what it is that they're going to do moving forward with Boeheim not there. It's not as if Boeheim left. I was thinking about it over the weekend. The disparity between how Boeheim left and Krzyzewski. Krzyzewski leaves when everything's going the way it's supposed to go, and leaving it, kind of handing the keys off as, Duke's still at their peak, and then Boeheim just felt like maybe stayed a little longer than he should have. And I'm curious to see how they respond, because that team is just, Mintz is really good and Starling's really good, but I just don't see them having an identity. And I thought towards the middle of that second half, they kind of quit on the game a little bit. Yeah. But the theme from the game was just how dominant Gonzaga was inside. And quite frankly, Jim, I think that's going to be a theme for us all season. Gonzaga plus 20 on the glass, 17 offensive rebounds, which led to 25 seconds second chance points. Gonzaga's big scored 55% of the points. EK and Watson were really good double doubles. Huff and Greg off the bench shot the ball well from the 3-point line. So I think that's going to be the identity of his team, is just the depth they have up front and the quality of talent they have up front. That's not to say every game all four are going to play at a super high level, or you might have a game where Greg or EK or Huff just log 12, 13, 14 minutes given whatever dynamics, but they're always going to have high-end guys in the front court, and I thought you saw that. Gonzaga just beat them up, and that's really a theme of the week, quite frankly, was Gonzaga's toughness defensively and then rebounding the ball, in my opinion. If the season ended today, I think it would be the first team in a long time that we would look at and say the identity was in those two categories and not on the offensive end of the floor. So good win. I thought, more importantly, just a really good response. And that was a quick turnaround, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Maybe 16, 17 hours after the final buzzer against Purdue. And kind of that second half was a tough one to deal with against Purdue, but they came back and looked pretty sharp from the get-go. And just that big lineup is going to be interesting against some teams. It's not, you're not going to live and die by it, but they can pound some folks on the glass with that lineup. And I think it showed in a couple of these games that could be utilized going forward. And that Syracuse game was kind of the start of the Anton Watson awakening in that tournament. And that takes us to the UCLA game where Anton seemed to have an okay night. Foxy, did you notice him at all out there?
Yeah, pretty efficient.
He's 14 out of 15, 3 of 3 from 3. If he makes his free throws, he's got 35 instead of 32. And look, you've been around this team. I've been around the program. We've seen Anton do special things for 4 years. A lot of times it's at the defensive end, guarding, blocking a shot, or a clever pass, or, just being so solid. This was one of the first times I've seen him just flat take over a game at the offensive end. He got credit. He was so good. He got credit for one that he didn't even touch. He was in the neighborhood when I think a Syracuse kid tipped it in accidentally. And so that shows his influence on that game. He was everywhere. Even when he wasn't scoring, he was scoring. But he just had one special night out there, and the variety of moves and scoring. He had a jump hook from about 12 feet on the baseline. That's a difficult shot. 3 balls that he swished, bank shots. He did the dream shake.
I saw that.
The key dream shake and bank shot. Just the kind of performance that's going to, kind of resonate with Gonzaga fans for a long, long time.
Yeah, and a really cool moment for a guy who's been here for a long time. It's about as aggressive as I've ever seen him coming out of the gate immediately. Right away he was looking to make an impact on the game, and I think he said it after the game. Just see that first one go in. Sometimes that happens as a player. There's no real rhyme or reason. Just everything is clicking. The game feels easier. It's a lot like a golfer hitting that perfect tee shot with their driver. You don't even feel the ball. You just go. You hit right through it. You can have that for a game, and I thought he did. He's improved every year as a percentage on his 3-point shot. I think he's taking good ones. He's not. I think at times in years past he maybe has been trying to force that issue a little bit. Like, I could do this, so he's taken at times some of those 3-point shots that maybe weren't the most advised, but he's been very selective with those. 4 of 8 on the year, 3 of 3 against UCLA. And I was really impressed. He drew 8 fouls. Now, there were 51 fouls in that game, so the officials were really trying to work out their whistle. But I loved how he put his head down, didn't settle for floaters and such. Got to the rim, put the ball on the floor, forced them, try to have to guard him in that way, and just an all-time performance for him, and something he'll always remember against UCLA. Gonzaga's got such a great history with that program. Even going back to the beginning of the run, a big win down there in Pauley Pavilion. So couldn't be happier for him. Really set the tone, and that's a big win. I'm somewhat dismissive of the idea that Syracuse is going to be a marquee win down the road. I think UCLA will be. Certainly, Arizona's cream of the crop in the Pac-12 right now, and should be by the end of the year. But you don't want to play UCLA. They want to beat you up. They're really hard to score against, and they do have more offensive firepower than maybe we saw on Wednesday of last week. That's going to end up being a really good win for Gonzaga. That's clearly a tournament team, and they've already got a couple of those now here at the start of the season. And but with respect to Anton, just a phenomenal performance. And I think people need to temper their expectations. I'm not sure we're looking for him to score at a Drew Timme or Adam Morrison type of clip. With that being said, I think it's reasonable to say if he can maintain that aggressiveness and that efficiency, not necessarily 4-15, but just the efficiency of what he's trying to do, picking the right spots to try to put some offensive pressure on teams, I think he can be really effective. And we might be looking at him being the leading scorer of this team as we get towards the end of the year.
Yeah. The whistles in that first half, especially, I think I still have ringing in my ears coming back from Hawaii, but took all the flow out of it. It did settle down a little bit more in the second half, but that was a physical game. UCLA has got some big guys, man. Kenneth Nwuba inside. Anton did work against both those guys, and those are high-level guys. Abona is projected as a first-round guy, maybe even a lottery guy. Big, physical, strong kid. But Anton took it to him and kind of carried him, which is a good thing because their offense didn't have. That's a double-edged sword. You're going to feed Anton the way he's going, so maybe nobody really had as many opportunities to get going, but he was really the one who carried it, and they were smart enough to keep going to him. And I just, Mick Cronin said a couple things after that game. First of all, he said he was like Drew out there, which I'm sure Anton really took to heart because they're very close friends, and probably stole the Dream Shake move from him to boot. And then he said something about Anton made 3 threes the entire season last year, which wasn't correct. It was an exaggeration, but kind of told you what they were willing to give up, and Anton made them pay for that. The Zags have kind of stolen, Mark Few and his crew have stolen Mick Cronin's lunch money here about 4 straight years with a couple of NCAA tournament games that they won right at the buzzer. And then here the other night kind of held them off, and defense did the job there in that game to hold them off in the second half. Anton at one end and the defense at the other. Well, let's move on. We've got a couple of general topics I want to touch on. Turnovers have been an issue. I wrote about it after the Syracuse game. I instead of watching the game at times, I watched Mark Few's reactions to the turnovers on the sideline, and they were highly entertaining. He had a lot of he had the deep frowns. He had the hands to the heavens. What are we doing? He tried to get him to jump stop. He was bent over, hunched over, like on his last breath. Very entertaining part of the game, except for what he saw on the floor was driving him crazy. Do you think there's an issue there, or is it just you ran up against 3 pretty good teams, or do you think this might be a recurring situation with the Zags taking care of the ball because they want to play fast? They're going to turn it over. But a lot of those weren't fast. A lot of them were in half court and just maybe trying to do too much is what it looked like from my end.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's over the tournament, Gonzaga's guards, Nembhard, Hickman, and Stromer were 25 assists, 24 turnovers.
Yeah.
Hickman had 4 assists, 9 turnovers, Stromer 4 and 4. Those guys are going to have the ball more than anybody else on the floor. That's not very good. I think on the year they're closer to 1.5. 1.5, but obviously that's baked up a little bit with Eastern Oregon and the Yale game. But I do think it's an issue. But the thing about it is I think it's an issue that they'll correct. Yeah. I think a lot of it, particularly in Nembhard's case, look, Nembhard and Hickman are not big guards. So some of those turnovers are kind of little guy turnovers. The play develops and a guy tips the ball that he might not otherwise have tipped if the guy was 6'4". I know that may sound silly, but it's just the nature of playing at this high level is you've got good length defensively and you can really bother sometimes these undersized guards. But at the same time, I think Nembhard is, because he's going to have the ball the majority of the time compared to Hickman and Stromer, it feels like sometimes he lets the easy pitch go by, and then he tries to make the special play. When I think a lot of those turnovers just come down to not over-penetrating, playing with your feet on the ground, not leaving your feet, and just making the simple play. At times he tries to thread the needle, and I think that leads to those deflections or just straight turnovers. I think the staff's going to be able to help him with that and just rein that back a little bit. You've heard me say this before. I'd rather pull a guy back than have to pull it out of him. And I love how aggressive Nembhard is. I love he wants to make plays for others. He just has to simplify it a little bit, in my opinion. Some of those turnovers are just careless, and they're plays he's trying to make that are unnecessary in that moment. If you make the simple play, it'll open it up, and you're going to get the ball back, another opportunity to make a play. So I think it's a concern, Jim, but it's not. It's something I think they can correct and improve on throughout the year. Now, if we're having the same conversation as we get into league play, it may be something that is just kind of a fabric of this backcourt. But my instinct is that they'll probably be able to dial it in. And for Hickman, it's it's surprising to see him with that kind of differential between assists to turnovers. He's certainly being asked. He's looking to score more than he is trying to play make. He's been better with the ball since he's been here. I'm not overly worried about that right now.
I think in those 3 games, the Zags had 1 more turnover than assist in all 3 games.
Yeah, you're right.
I'd be curious how many, might be a couple decades since they've had 3 games in a row with more turnovers than assists. Who knows? But the other side on the positive side of things, I thought was the defense for 5 of 6 halves, really, of that tournament. Held Purdue to 30 in the first half, and Purdue finishes with 73. Edey does his thing; he gets 25. But for the most part, the next 2 games did a pretty good job against Syracuse, a good job against UCLA. Those aren't prolific, high-scoring teams, but they have talent and ability. And I thought the Zags were solid. I don't think this is a shutdown defense by any means, but Mark Few, after the UCLA win, said that the defense is ahead of the offense, which is a little surprising around Gonzaga circles. It's usually the other way around, but I thought that defense was good. I thought one key thing to that was Stromer, and he's just very solid. He stays in front a lot, makes guys shoot over him. I thought dribble penetration hasn't been as much as we saw last year so far. That's helped. And then I think they're cleaning up the glass pretty good. There's no second chance opportunities, or as many with those big lineups. Is that defense going to carry the freight here for a little bit, Foxy, or do you think that'll even out as well, like the turnovers?
It's interesting. I'm not concerned about the turnovers, but the shooting is remarkable. I read somewhere Gonzaga's around 28% from the 3-point line. That'd be the worst percentage to start a season since 1997.
Yeah.
So talk about missing a guy who's never played for Gonzaga inventors. Just would love to know what that number would be with them on the floor. I was really impressed with their defense. I think that the 3 big lineup works when you have Greg out there.
Exactly.
And Greg, I thought Greg was really good. I know his averages aren't going to jump out at the page. UCLA, though, he had 4 points in 18 minutes, but he drew 3 fouls, had 8 rebounds, a couple blocks. I just love his energy. And he really plays well with EK and Watson. Now, interestingly enough, in the UCLA game, they didn't go 3 bigs at all. Huff only played 6 minutes. The 3 guys starting in the backcourt played the entire game. So that's I'm curious what that means moving forward. I don't know if you heard anything about that. They completely abandoned a 3 big lineup against a very big UCLA team.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I agree with you on Stromer. 40 minutes against UCLA, didn't 2 points off the free throw line, but 8 rebounds. Really active. His length, I think he's ahead of where you'd expect most guards. But in the tournament, held teams to below 40% from the field. Inside the arc, 48% were really good from the 3-point line, guarding folks. I think this team from on the glass and defensively, I'm not sure yet if they're going to be elite, but they're going to be really good. And those are 2 things you can count on every night. So even if this team isn't a high-level offensive team, this is a team that's going to be real streaky on that end. Having the defense and the rebounding on a night-to-night basis makes that a lot more palatable for you. You're not living and dying with what you're doing offensively.
Yeah. Like I said, I think that can be a sneaky good part of the game for them. Maybe folks weren't expecting it as much, but I think against that quality of competition, held Yale to 61 too. That looks pretty good now too.
Does, yeah.
Let's move on. We'll get a quick thought on Cal State Bakersfield and USC this week. Bakersfield, great mascot, the Roadrunners. I know this because my middle daughter signed to play volleyball there before ending up at San Jose State. Great logo. But beyond that, they're 3-3 on the basketball court. They lost by 26 to USC, 20 to Cal. Got wins over Southern Utah, Sacramento State. Very tough shooting team so far for them. A little bit like the Zags, I think are right around 30% from three. These guys are 23.7 from three. One good scorer, at least in double figures, named Caleb Higgins. He's a 5'10" guard. 0 for 6 his last game out, so he'll be driven. I don't know how much studying you've done on the Roadrunners, but a quick thought on what we might see tomorrow night, Foxy.
Yeah, I haven't taken a deep dive in them. You're right. Higgins is really the only guy at 5'10". He's a pretty good scorer, getting 16 a game, which you mentioned, but only shoots at 21% from the 3-point line. This is a nice get back home game for Gonzaga. Certainly more of a test than Eastern Oregon would have been, but obviously a game that they're going to be heavily favored, and a game that I do think you leave these 3-day tournaments and you're thinking about how did we do, what's our record, what are the big takeaways we can have. But as you kind of come back and you start really watching film, you really start finding the small details that you want to work out or work on. And this is a good opportunity for Gonzaga as they head to the weekend to play USC. I'd expect to see some of the guys deeper on the bench. I thought June gave them great minutes against UCLA. Yeah. I really am hopeful that he can carry over and maybe build into something. Again, Gonzaga doesn't need him to play 15, 20 minutes a game. They need him to play 8 to 10. Yeah. And then can they try to instill a little confidence in Luka? That's what these games are about. It's really about trying to tighten things up and maybe trying to work a little bit on the back end of your bench. I was reminded of several years ago, over a decade ago, if you remember, I'm sure you remember, Will Foster was, played his whole career here, hadn't been playing much, but he'd get spot minutes here or there. I think the staff did a good job of keeping him engaged. And then lo and behold, they're playing the WCC tournament in Portland and they need him to play. And he played great, ended up winning that game. That's why this stuff's important. That's why it's important to keep guys like Luka and June engaged, and that's what one of the purposes of these games, I think, is one of the things you can accomplish in these types of games is to keep those types of kids engaged throughout the year.
Then it's on to USC in Las Vegas at the Grand Garden MGM Arena. That game is going to be interesting. USC has as good a backcourt as there is in the country. Boogie Ellis, Isaiah Collier, the #1 recruit in the country last year. Those guys go for about 40 a game. They've got another kid, Kobe Johnson. He's a 6'6" wing. He's about 15 a game. So that's 54 of the 74 they average on the season. They're 4-2. I watched them play Oklahoma. Had some problems stopping Oklahoma in the second half and scoring in the second half, and lost that game. They've got the WSU transfer, Rodman, is down there. Nice player, both ends of the court. I believe they were picked ahead of UCLA in the preseason Pac-12 poll. They might have been second and UCLA third, but right there at the top with those three teams joining Arizona. What's the challenge with that guard line coming up this weekend?
Well, you talked about how in Maui, Gonzaga did a good job guarding the ball, and we didn't see a high number of blow-bys. They will be tested against USC. USC has real guys on the perimeter. Boogie Ellis has been there forever. Obviously, Collier is going to be a top 5 pick. They have really explosive guards that put a ton of pressure on you. It's going to be a really good challenge for Nembhard and Hickman and Stromer as well. So I'll be interested to see. I mean, they shoot it at a decent clip as a team, I think 36%. So they're not a great 3-point shooting team, but they certainly can knock those down. And look, they're well coached. A bad loss against UC Irvine, they win that game, they're 5-1, and this might be a little different as of today. So they play Eastern on Wednesday. We expect them to win that game. They're going to be up for Gonzaga, and it's another great opportunity for GU to, I think, really see where they're at. What have we worked on since we got back from Maui? And that could be a good win down the road. And really, I mean, you and I have talked about this for years now. This is why Gonzaga schedules these games, because on a normal year, historically, St. Mary's is really the one tournament team you're playing after the new year. And obviously they'll have Kentucky this year, but these games are important. The opportunity to play against these tournament NCAA tournament type teams or level teams, and I'd expect Gonzaga is going to be ready to play that game. But that will be a hard game. It's almost like Syracuse in that they've got Starling and Mintz are top end talent on the perimeter. I don't think they play that way. They don't play winning basketball necessarily. Collier and Ellis do, and they're probably better than those two. Yeah. So it's going to be a good test.
Yeah, heck, that might be 2 first-round picks there. I don't know what the pro scouts think of Ellis, but he's been a great player for several years. Transferred from Memphis and then kind of really blossomed at USC. Both those guys shoot over 40%. Small sample size so far, but 40% from the three. So the challenge is on both stopping them from penetration
and they guard. And they guard.
Yeah,
they'll get up
there. Everybody guards at USC. That's Andy Enfield. A little bit like UCLA in that regard. They're going to guard you and they're going to make it tough on you. But they have some individual playmakers with those 2 guards that UCLA didn't have. So we'll see how the Zags hold up there. Foxy, always good to be with you. That's going to do it for the podcast. Tell all your friends, all your Gonzaga fans out there, your neighbors, whoever, tell them about the pod. Let them know. We're with you every Monday, and we'll be back next Monday again. Thanks for joining us.